Tonight we're not marching into battle or standing in a palace. We're sinking into the cracks beneath a city's surface, into the damp basements, shuttered storefronts, and flickering gaslight of Seattle's Chinatown in 1897. You're not a villain, not a rebel, not even a criminal. You're just tired, broke, forgotten, and slowly dissolving into smoke. Tonight, you are an opium addict, the kind the city pretends not to see until it needs a scapegoat. You didn't plan to end up here, but grief is heavy, pain is expensive, and the pipe is quiet. Before we sink too deep into the haze, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always find it strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting off to these quiet collapses. And if you'd like early access to more of these slow, grim stories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link in the description. But for now, lie back, get comfortable. Let's begin. You arrive in Seattle by rail, not in a passenger car, but wedged between crates in the back of a freight car that smells like mildew and old potatoes. You're broke and bruised, a leftover from somewhere else. You drop from the train with a grunt and start walking toward wherever the streets look less judgmental. It isn't your first time arriving somewhere with nothing. You've done this dance before. Step off, keep your head down, find a boarding house that'll take IOUs. But this time is different. This time, your right leg aches with every step from a railroad injury that never healed properly, and there's a tightness in your chest that feels like failure curling in for the night. Seattle is loud in a way that doesn't feel like life, more like metal against stone. Steam whistles, streetcars shriek, men shout prices in accents from all over. You weave through it with your duffel slung over one shoulder and your hands jammed in your pockets. Everything smells like coal smoke and fish guts. It's growing fast, everyone says. A boom town now, thanks to timber and gold rumours and rail money pouring in from the east. But it's not a town made for lingering. The streets slope too sharply, the windows look too clean, and every man walking briskly past you seems to already know where he belongs. You don't. You try the job office because that's what men like you are supposed to do. The clerk doesn't look up when you step in, just points at a board with cards tacked to it, most of them already spoken for. There's work out at the docks, he mutters, if you can swing a hook with one hand and balance on a busted knee. You nod like you'll think it over, but you don't go. You're tired of proving things to strangers who already think you've lost. Instead, you drift through the alleys behind the general stores, where crates are stacked like altars and smells drift out of kitchens you're not welcome in. You catch the faint scents of frying garlic, sesame oil, and something fermented and sweet. Not bad, just unfamiliar. Chinatown, they call it, though no one agrees on where it actually begins. The signs are in a language you can't read. The face is different from yours, but the pace is slower here, quieter. There's less yelling, fewer eyes watching your limp with suspicion. You sit for a moment on a stack of bricks outside a shuttered storefront and press your hand into your coat pocket, where the last coins rattle together like loose teeth. There are reasons a man ends up in a place like this. Some come running west because they've heard stories about jobs that pay in gold and women who don't ask questions. Others come running from something, a collapsed bank, a failed harvest, a funeral they couldn't afford to attend. You don't remember which category you fall into anymore. You only remember the job in Montana that ended with a snapped cable and a screaming foreman. You remember waking up in Spokane with 2 fewer teeth and no boots. And you remember the ache that started in your spine and crawled up your side until it lived behind your ribs, like a second heart. The kind of pain no doctor fixes, the kind that waits. The 1890s were good for somebody, but not for you. Panic swept through the country like a fever, and you were already weak when it hit. The railroad stopped hiring, timber dried up. Every town between Chicago and the Pacific grew suspicious of strangers. Labor unions marched, companies struck back, and men like you got caught in between. too sick to work, too proud to beg, too white to be turned away, but too dirty to be welcomed. You're not the only one, of course. You've passed others sleeping in doorways or huddled behind barrels in alleyways. But the difference between seeing them and being one of them is a single bad week. And you've had 3. Your cough started somewhere in Idaho, maybe before. At first it was just dust in the lungs, then blood on the handkerchief. Now it's the kind of cough that turns heads in a room. You try to hide it when you can, but there's only so much you can do with hands that shake. You haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Half a heel of bread, and something pickled you don't want to name. You pawned your gloves in Tacoma, your belt in Olympia, and your pride somewhere back in Missoula, though you can't remember exactly where. These things have a way of falling out of your pockets when you're not looking. By the time the sun starts slipping behind the hills, you're limping along a street that doesn't seem to end. Your stomach growls in protest, but the ache in your chest wins. You pause beside a laundromat, where steam curls from the roof, and sit on the edge of the curb, watching your breath fog in the air. Your head is light, your fingers numb. For a moment, you think about lying down right there, just curling up and letting the city keep walking past you. But then someone speaks behind you, not in anger or warning, but something quieter. Need a place to rest? You turn. A man stands in the doorway of a shop with shuttered windows, his face half lit by a gas lamp behind him. He's older than you by a decade, maybe more, his clothes plain but neat, his accent lightly touched with something Pacific. Maybe Chinese, maybe Hawaiian, maybe just tired. You nod slowly. He doesn't smile, but he doesn't frown either. Just gestures with 2 fingers and turns back inside. You follow. The stairs creak under your weight as you follow the man down. He doesn't speak, and you don't ask questions. The wood beneath your feet feels damp, swollen from years of weather and wear, and the air grows thicker the deeper you go. Warm, humid, and sweet in a way that makes your nose sting. You brush past a faded curtain and into a room that isn't quite dark but dim enough that it takes your eyes a moment to adjust. The lamp in the corner burns low behind amber glass, flickering gently. For a moment, all you can see are shadows. You were expecting a cot, maybe a spare blanket, something simple, plain and functional, the kind of corner where a man down on his luck might lie down for a few hours without being asked what he did to get there. But this room is different. There are no bunks, no tidy rows of bedding, no sounds of shallow snoring or whispered conversation. Instead, the space is cluttered with thin straw mats and worn pillows, bodies curled loosely across the floor like discarded coats. The air hums faintly with heat and breath, and something sharper underneath, a smell you can't quite place. Not rot, not incense, not food, but something sweet and dark that fills the lungs like syrup. No one looks up. No one acknowledges you at all. You take a step forward and hear the soft crunch of something under your boot. Maybe a crumb of ash, maybe something else. There's a low table near the centre of the room, its surface scratched and ringed with old water stains. Small ceramic bowls rest on it, beside an oil lamp and what looks like a flattened bundle of black tar. A narrow pipe, long and delicate, lies beside it, faintly glinting in the lamplight. You glance back toward the man who led you down, but he's already turned away, moving through the room like he's part of it, checking on a dozing form here, lighting a wick there, offering nothing that resembles instruction. You don't know what kind of place this is exactly, but the rules are clear enough. No one's here to talk. No one wants company. They've all come here to leave something behind. A pain, a memory, a version of themselves they couldn't afford to carry one day longer. You find a corner near the back and lower yourself to the mat, the stuffing uneven and sour smelling, the fabric gone thin from too many nights of sweat and shifting limbs. You sit stiffly at first, one knee aching from the descent, your back pressed to the wall. The smell is in your clothes now, in your hair. You try to breathe shallowly, but it's everywhere. There's an older man lying just a few feet away, wrapped in a threadbare coat that might once have been military. He has a sailor's tattoo fading across his forearm and a hollowed look in his cheeks, like he's been emptying himself out for years. His eyes flutter open briefly when you shift on the mat, but he doesn't focus on you. Just sighs, then closes them again. Further in, near the centre, you spot a woman in mourning black, her gloved hands folded neatly over her stomach, as she lies motionless, face turned toward the ceiling. You see white men, Chinese men, men you can't place at all, none of them young, none of them talking. One man lets out a slow rasping cough behind a partition. No one reacts. You don't mean to stay. You tell yourself that more than once. Just a place to sit, to rest the leg, to warm your hands. You lean your head back against the wall and close your eyes just for a moment. The hum of the room settles around you like a blanket, and beneath it there's a rhythm. The scratch of a match, the soft bubble of resin melting, the hollow clink of something ceramic against something wooden. Someone shifts. Another exhales. You start to lose track of how long you've been there. 5 minutes, 20. Time feels slow and thick here, like walking through syrup in a dream. Eventually, someone approaches. You don't see him at first, just hear the soft pad of bare feet and the muffled clink of tin. A man kneels beside the table, his motions steady, practiced. He wears a pale shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbow, forearms marked with faint old scars. He doesn't look at you, just leans over the lamp and pinches off a piece of black resin, rolling it gently between his fingers before heating it on the end of a fine pin. The smell thickens as it bubbles and smokes, pungent and burnt sweet, like molasses charred on an iron skillet. He packs it carefully into the pipe's bowl, turns it once and holds it out. He doesn't speak, just offers it. You hesitate, hands still in your lap. You don't know the ritual, don't know if you're supposed to bow, to pay, to whisper something first. But he makes no sign of impatience. The pipe hangs there, in the space between you. Not an invitation exactly, but not a command either. Just a continuation of the rhythm. You reach out. The stem is warm, smooth, and lighter than it looks. You fumble with it slightly, trying to mimic what you've seen, but your fingers are clumsy. He leans in and holds the flame for you, and you draw in the smoke as best you can. Shallow at first, then deeper. The taste surprises you. Not acrid or bitter like you expected, but oddly soft, sweet and woody, with a bite that catches only at the end. You hold it longer than you should, then cough once, embarrassed. No one notices. The man takes the pipe back without comment, already preparing another. You lean back again and let it wash through you. It doesn't hit like liquor. It doesn't numb like laudanum. It doesn't punch or drop or spin. It just softens everything. The pain in your leg ebbs. The tightness in your chest loosens. Your hands stop shaking. Even your thoughts seem to slow, unfurling like smoke in warm air. You can still feel the cold of the world outside the room, but only distantly now, like it's happening to someone else. You understand, without knowing how, that this is what the others came for. Not escape, not euphoria, just relief. You close your eyes, you don't dream, you don't move. The warmth soaks into your bones and quiets the part of you that was always calculating how many meals you had left, how far you could walk, which town might take you in. None of that matters here. No one here is worried about tomorrow. Most aren't even worried about now. You stay like that for what could be 10 minutes or an hour, until the smoke starts to fade from your lungs and the ache begins to return, creeping in slowly, like a bill coming due. You reach into your coat pocket, but your fingers close around nothing. The last coins went earlier, spent on stale bread and a night you didn't remember. You glance around, unsure. The man in the rolled sleeves is passing by again, setting down a new pipe, checking on a sailor who's begun to shiver in his sleep. He pauses near you, says nothing, just looks at your feet. It takes a second. Then you understand. Your boots come off with difficulty. The lace is stiff. The leather cracked and damp. You set them beside the mat and lean back again, trying not to feel exposed. The man picks them up, doesn't check the size, doesn't inspect the wear, just nods once and moves on. You sit there in your socks, the floor cool beneath you. A new pipe appears beside you a few minutes later, warm and ready. You take it without speaking. This time, it doesn't feel like a decision. Just the natural next step in a night that stopped asking for reasons. You leave the den just long enough to scrape together enough coin for a return. A pawned pocket knife. 2 hours hauling crates down by the docks until your lungs rattle and your leg gives out. It's never much, but it's enough. Enough to buy a few more hours of stillness. Enough to stop the ache behind your eyes. And once you know the way back, once you understand what waits in the quiet and the dark, you keep going. Again. And again. There are things you learn quickly, and things no one says aloud. The den isn't a home, or a shelter, or a business in the formal sense. It's more like a tide pool, quiet, enclosed, just deep enough to hold what's been left behind by the larger world. The rules here aren't written down, but they're everywhere, woven into the floorboards and the flickering shadows. You learn them not by instruction, but by observation, by watching what others do, and more importantly, what they don't. For example, you don't speak unless spoken to, and even then, you keep it brief. You don't ask names. You don't touch anyone unless they're convulsing or clearly dead. You don't step over a man who's lying on the floor. You go around. You don't light your own pipe unless you brought it from somewhere else. And even then, you wait until the room's quiet. You never complain about the resin. You never bargain on the second visit. And you never ever ask where the owner is. The room runs itself. That's the point. Most nights, it's the same man at the table. Older Chinese, with a faded blue jacket and a limp that matches yours but slower. He doesn't speak much, not even in his own tongue, though sometimes you hear him mutter softly as he mixes the opium. Not prayer exactly, but something rhythmic. He tends the lamps, checks the mats, sweeps the ashes with a woven broom, and sets the pipes down with the quiet reverence of someone tending shrines. No one calls him by name. You aren't sure if anyone knows it. But when he's not there, the room feels wrong. Too still, too hollow, like a church with the altar stripped bare. People come and go in a rhythm that's never quite the same, but always familiar. There are the nightly regulars, pale-faced and hollow-eyed, who never seem fully awake, even when they're sitting up. There are the sailors, mostly white, who arrive in 2s or 3s, loud for the first 5 minutes, and silent for the rest. There are the widows, not many, but enough, who wear black gloves and stiff collars, and lie down as if preparing for burial, and every so often someone new will arrive in clean clothes and stiff posture, looking like they don't belong. They usually don't return. You notice the talkative sailor first. He always finds the mat near the centre, and spends the first few minutes of each visit whispering to anyone nearby. Stories about ports in Manila, women in Vancouver, lost fingers, stolen wages, bad fish. No one answers, but that doesn't stop him. His words taper off only when the pipe reaches his lips. After that, he snores lightly, arms crossed like a corpse laid out for judgment. You don't know his name, but you start to time your visits around his. He talks less now. You wonder if that's a good thing. The widow is quiet, always the same dress, always the same gloves. You once saw her remove them to clean her pipe, hands pale and bird-like, with a faint tremor in the fingers. She speaks only when necessary, and even then, only in questions. Is it free tonight? Is it the strong stuff? Will it be quiet? The man in the blue jacket always answers with a nod. You never see her eat. You never see her leave. You suspect she's there more often than you are, though it's hard to be sure. Time has started to slip. That's another thing no one warns you about. The loss of time. It begins slowly. You think you've been lying down for 10 minutes, maybe 20. Then you open your eyes and find the lamp's been trimmed, the crowd has changed, and your stomach reminds you that you haven't eaten since yesterday morning. Eventually, you stop keeping track altogether. Day becomes a rumour. You use other markers now. The condition of your socks, the soreness in your shoulders, the ache behind your teeth. If the floor is cold, it's morning. If it's sticky, it's late. If the sailor is talking, it's early. If he's silent, it's time to go. You begin to mark your life in layers of discomfort. How bad the cough is when you wake up. How long it takes to stand. Whether the pipe calms your hands or makes them twitch. The first few visits were measured in hours at a stop between shifts, a reward for surviving another day. But now you linger. The mat remembers the shape of your back. The air smells less foreign. You know which pipe you'll get and who touched it last. You know where to sit to avoid the drips from the ceiling, which mat doesn't squeak when you roll over, and which corner of the room goes unnoticed during raids. Because yes, there are raids. Not often, not yet, but enough to teach you how to listen for footsteps above. The police don't come for you, not exactly. They come for the place, for the story, for the headlines. When they do, it's fast and theatrical. A bang on the trapdoor, boots on the steps, orders barked in English and poorly translated Chinese. The older man usually disappears before they arrive, along with anything worth charging someone for. Those who can move fast do. Those who can't, well, they come back with bruises, or don't come back at all. In the spaces between raids and rituals, you make small trades, not money. You're long past that. Now it's pieces of your life. A button from your coat buys you another hour. A promise of a day's work tomorrow buys you two. Once you handed over a folded letter you never sent, still sealed, and the man placed a pipe beside you without a word. You don't know if he read it. You hope he didn't. You remember what it said, and that's bad enough. You rarely speak. When you do, it's usually just to say thank you, and even that feels too large for the room. Words don't carry well here. They feel out of place, like light in a grave. You listen instead. To the sounds that repeat, the match strike, the bubbling opium, the soft gasp of a breath drawn too deep. Occasionally, someone hums. Once, the widow sang 2 lines of something you didn't recognise, then went quiet for 3 hours. Another time, the sailor coughed so hard he vomited, and no one looked up. Not even you. You begin to understand how long you've been there, not by looking at a calendar, but by what's gone missing. Your belt, your coat lining, the silver button you used to fidget with. You don't miss them. You just notice their absence the same way you notice new cracks in the ceiling or a different man sweeping the floor. The room changes, but slowly, like a tide shifting while you sleep. You've begun to lie about how long you stay. Sometimes you come up for air, not much, just long enough to walk a few blocks, feel the rain on your face, scrounge for bread or coins or excuses to stay away from the pipe. And when you do, the contrast stings. Outside, the streets are narrow, loud and bright. Inside, no one asks your name. But out here, in the daylight, the city demands definition. Who you are, where you belong, what side of the line you stand on. Chinatown isn't drawn on any official map, but you learn where it begins by feel. The signage shifts from English to Chinese. The shop fronts grow more crowded. Pigs hang in butcher windows, their eyes glassy and glazed with sweet lacquer. Wooden carts creak along uneven brick, steered by men in round-collared jackets and straw slippers. Women carry baskets on one shoulder and umbrellas in the other, speaking too quickly for you to follow. The air smells sharper here. Star anise, fish sauce, soy, sesame oil, roasting pork. Nothing like the meals you remember. Better, in a way. More alive. But the stairs here are longer. Not cruel necessarily, just cautious, protective. You're an outsider and everyone knows it. You don't belong in the boarding houses or the gambling rooms, or the herbal shops with their walls of labelled drawers and jars full of dried mystery. You don't belong in the alleys between laundry shops, where back doors lead to staircases that lead to trapdoors that lead back to the den. You're tolerated in the way a stray dog might be, not fed, not welcomed, but ignored as long as you don't snarl or bark too loud. You walk carefully, eyes forward, hands visible. You've learned how to keep your movements slow and small, how to avoid looking like you're casing the shops or watching the girls. You pass men your age, who look right through you, and boys half your size who follow you for a few steps before peeling off, already wise enough to know you're not worth the trouble. You don't blame them. If you saw yourself coming, you'd cross the street too. The police do. They hover just outside the district lines, walking 2 by 2 like they're afraid of catching something in the air. Sometimes they storm through, shoulders squared, batons ready, shouting in a language they barely bother to translate. When that happens, you disappear, into the alley, through a door, behind a stack of crates in the back of a grocer's. You're not the target, not exactly. They're here for the Chinese, for the rumours, for the headlines. But you know what happens when they get bored. Addicts don't make good witnesses, and you've already given up your boots. The Chinese men who run the den, if run is even the word, never show fear. Not visibly, not in the way you do, flinching at raised voices and sudden boots on the stairs. They move like smoke, quietly, deliberately, without hurry. You wonder how long they've been here. You wonder how many of them came expecting to be miners, or merchants or cooks, and found instead that there was more money in silence, more safety in shadows. You hear whispers sometimes about crackdowns, about new laws, about deportations. You don't know what's true, but the tension hangs in the air like a held breath. Seattle's papers don't print names anymore, just warnings. The opium menace in our midst, the yellow drug, white women corrupted in Chinatown. You read the headlines when you can find old scraps used to wrap fish or stuff window cracks. You don't recognise yourself in them, but you recognise the fear, the kind that turns lawmakers into crusaders and neighbourhoods into evidence, the kind that makes it easier to blame the pipe than the pain it numbs, the kind that sells. You hear that opium's been illegal for a while now, at least for smoking. You don't know the dates, you don't follow legislation, you just know that no one seems to be stopping it. The trade goes on, tucked behind laundries and grocery stalls, kept quiet by bribes and threat and centuries of practice. You hear that the morphine pills the pharmacists sell uptown are just as strong, but they're labelled and taxed and sold in bottles with the Queen's seal on them. You wouldn't know. You couldn't afford a bottle if you tried. Your poison doesn't come in glass. It comes wrapped in paper, passed hand to hand, burned into bowls, and breathed away before anyone official comes knocking. You start to realise that even here, even in the shadows, even in the places no one else wants, you don't quite belong. You're not Chinese. You're not family. You're not even useful. You're just another white ghost wandering through borrowed space. And the only reason they haven't told you to leave is because you're quiet. Because you pay when you can. Because you don't ask questions. You've become part of the furniture, faded, ignored, occasionally stepped over. But not trusted, never trusted. There's another den 2 blocks over, through a narrow brick archway, behind a pawn shop that only takes silver. You try it once. The floor's harder, the air damper, the pipes taste different. A younger man tends the lamps there. No limp, no ritual, just fast movements, and eyes that don't meet yours. You don't go back. You like the first place better. It feels less like business, more like surrender. The widow is still there. So is the sailor, though he talks less now. His eyes look cloudier, and the tremor in his hand has become a shake. You haven't seen the older man in the blue jacket for a few nights, but another has taken his place, thinner, quieter, more formal. He lights the pipe with a practiced flick, wipes the mouthpiece with a cloth you think might once have been white, and says nothing when you lie back without speaking. You wonder where the first man went. You don't ask. It wouldn't matter. You learn not to make noise when you enter, not to cough too loud, not to stay too long after the last pipe's gone cold. You start to recognise faces, not names, but silhouettes, postures, the way someone folds their arms or lies with one foot turned outward. The regulars, the ghosts, you become one of them. The floor creaks in different places now. The lamps dim earlier. The air feels heavier, but your lungs have stopped protesting. You no longer flinch at the smell. You crave it, and the English fade as it's not sudden, just gradual, like everything else. One day you realise that no one's spoken to you in your language for hours. Then days. Conversations hum softly in Cantonese around you, too fast to follow. The instructions come through gesture, payment by glance. You stop trying to speak at all. It's easier that way, safer. The newspapers find a new enemy. It looks like your friend. The man who once passed you a pipe without speaking, the one who tied off your mat with care and wiped the mouthpiece clean before placing it beside your hand. He's the monster now, according to the headlines. The tempter, the criminal. Not the medicine, not the system, not the hollow in your chest that made the pipe feel like air. No, just him. His cue, his hands, his face. 1,000 printed words saying what nobody dares to shout aloud. The city begins to shake itself awake with purpose. Its reformers marching in polished boots and righteous fury. The women in white gloves hand out pamphlets downtown. The pastors preach from pulpits about the Eastern Plague and the corruption of white flesh. Politicians find their voices again just in time for re-election. There are rallies now, meetings full of loud voices and silent assumptions. The same men who once bought the same smoke from the same bowl now sign papers declaring it unnatural, un-American, unholy. You see their names printed on the same pages, where yours would never appear. You learn to walk faster, to look smaller. The raids come more often now, and they're messier. Less warning, more shouting, fewer questions. The back doors are sealed, the trap doors are nailed shut. One night, the younger widow shows up, her gloves torn, one side of her face swollen where someone used the back of a hand instead of words. She says nothing. No one asks. The first man you lose disappears quietly. You don't even notice at first. He was one of those who never made a sound, just lay on the same mat, same angle, same coat bundled under his head. One day, you realise his place has been empty for too long. Someone else lies there now, curled in the opposite direction. You wait for days, then stop waiting. You never knew his name. That makes it easier, in a way. The second man goes loudly. He was arrested during a sweep downtown. White, middle-aged, dressed too well for someone using the pipe daily. They printed his name in the Times. Said he had been taken by the vice and was expected to testify against his Chinese suppliers. He didn't come back after that. Maybe he's in jail. Maybe he skipped town. Maybe he got clean. Maybe not. You imagine the pipe in his hand one last time, his fingers trembling the way yours do now. You wonder if he begged or if he went quiet. You hope he didn't cry. You hope you won't. The rules inside the den change. They're not spoken, but they're there. You can feel the shift when you walk in. Pipes are passed with less ceremony now. The flame is dimmer, the residue thinner. You notice fewer people sleeping. Everyone leaves sooner than they used to. An hour, maybe 2. As if trying to stay beneath a threshold they can't name. You see the fear in their eyes even when they're drifting. The question behind every exhale. Will I make it out this time? You hear that someone told the police where the den was. Not your den, but another. That they offered a name to save themselves. That someone was beaten so badly they can't walk right anymore. That someone died, that someone ran. The details change depending on who tells them, but the pattern holds. Each day the city gets cleaner, louder, and more afraid of itself. You hear words like cleanse, purify, and protect, spoken by people who've never needed protection from anything. One night, the old man in the blue jacket returns. Just for a moment. He doesn't speak. He doesn't sit. He stands near the entrance, scans the room once, then turns and leaves. You watch him go. You think about following, but you don't move. You tell yourself he was never really there. You never find out if he comes back again. You start hearing rumours of treatment centres. Not for the Chinese, not really, but for the white ones. The ones who can be saved. They're called sanitariums, or hygienic institutions, and they promise cures in soft tones and clean linens. You hear some men went in and came back different. Sober, maybe. Or just emptied out. You don't believe in cures anymore. Not the kind they print on posters, or whisper into the ears of widows. You don't have the money anyway. And if you did, you'd rather spend it on silence. The streets grow meaner. You see more blood than you used to. Not much, not every day. Just enough to remind you where you are. A woman screaming behind a curtain in the alley. A man clutching his side, crawling under a stairwell. A boy with a busted nose, wiping it clean on his sleeve, without flinching. You pass them all. You used to care. Maybe you still do. But your limbs are heavy now. Your breath comes slow. The ache in your side has become part of you. One afternoon, though it might be morning or evening or something else, you limp toward the den and find the door boarded over. Not sealed, not smashed, just shut. Carefully, quietly, a notice is tacked to the frame, but you don't read it. You already know what it says. You stand there for a while, socks damp, breath visible. You don't knock, you don't try the latch. You just turn around and walk until your legs give out. You sleep in a stairwell that night, curled up beside a crate that smells like old onions. Your shoulder is pressed to the stone. Your hip aches. You dream of smoke that won't light, of matches that break, of mats that disappear when you blink. You wake up shivering with something missing in your chest. Not pain exactly, but the hollow where relief used to go. You spend the next few nights wherever you can. Other stairwells, alleys, the empty space between two crates behind a butcher's shop that doesn't open on Sundays. You sleep in fits and wake shivering, hungry, soaked in rain or sweat or both. Your stomach cramps from whatever you manage to steal or beg. You tell yourself maybe the worst is over. Maybe you can stop now. You repeat it in your head until the aches drown it out. The noise inside your ribs becomes unbearable. You're not trying to chase the feeling anymore. You're just trying to stop hurting. Word finds you slowly, through someone who still has both boots and enough teeth to speak clearly. A new place, smaller, tighter, behind a tea shop on the edge of Chinatown, where the signage has been blacked out and the windows painted with thick grey brushstrokes. You don't ask questions, you just go. You tell yourself you're only going to look, just to see who's still around, just to say goodbye to whatever you haven't admitted is gone. The back entrance is a side door, flanked by broken crates and a tin bucket of water you don't want to inspect. No one answers when you knock. The latch gives with pressure. Inside, the hallway is narrow, panelled in green paint that's curled away from the walls like dying leaves. You pass through a kitchen stripped of life. No fire in the stove, no pots, no scent. Just dust and a few glass bottles turned on their sides. You follow the sound of nothing down 2 steps and through a beaded curtain into a basement room where the air thickens at once, dense with the smell of smoke and damp wool. No one speaks, not even to you. The new den is worse in every way that counts. The ceiling is lower. The walls are stained with something you hope is water. The mats are older, thinner, and damp even when the weather is dry. The light comes from a single lantern with a cracked lens that flickers every time someone exhales too close to it. There's no incense here, no warm undertone of sesame or ginger to cut through the scent. Just opium and sweat and mildew. You sit down anyway, because where else would you go? The faces are half the same, half different. The widow isn't here. The sailor's here, but he's not the same. He no longer talks. He no longer looks up. He sits cross-legged by the far wall, staring at nothing, his mouth slightly open like he's forgotten what it was ever for. The new faces don't make eye contact. One woman lies curled in a corner with a scarf wrapped tightly over her eyes, her hand twitching every few minutes, as if swatting away a dream. A man in his 30s lies flat on his stomach, unmoving, the soles of his shoes worn through to the lining. The ritual is the same, but the hands are different. The new keeper, if he can even be called that, is a boy, no older than 16, with a long face and a scar running from his cheekbone to his ear. He doesn't look at anyone. He doesn't clean the pipes between users. He moves quickly, impatiently, scooping the paste from a shallow jar, barely heating it before handing it over. There's no ceremony now, just transaction, just habit, just need. You try to pretend it's the same. You lie back, you take the pipe, you inhale. The smoke is thicker, harsher, but it settles your stomach long enough to forget how empty it is. Your limbs warm, the pounding in your head quiets, but it doesn't last. The relief thins faster now. It breaks apart like wet paper. You can't hold on to it the way you used to, and when it fades, the pain returns worse. Like it's been sharpening itself in the dark while you drifted. Your body starts failing you in ways you can't ignore. First, it's the gums. They bleed when you chew, then when you speak, then just because. Your teeth ache in the cold and wiggle when you press your tongue to them. Your hair dulls, thins, falls out in patches you don't notice until you run a hand through it and come away holding something that should still be part of you. Your fingernails crack, your skin flakes, your stomach clenches even when there's nothing in it to burn. You cough more often now, and not just from the smoke. Something has taken root deep in your lungs, something wet and rattling. You try to swallow it down, to hide it when others are sleeping, but the sound echoes off the basement walls like an accusation. One night, your throat spasms so hard, you curl forward on the mat and feel blood rise up behind your teeth. You taste copper. You wipe it on your sleeve. No one turns their head. The boy with the scar says nothing. He lights another pipe and passes it to someone else without looking. You lie back again, face turned to the cold stone wall, the mat damp beneath you, your spine pressed into every ridge of the floor. You feel hollow. You are hollow, but not clean, just emptied out for something you can't name. You don't remember when you last ate, or washed, or dreamt. There is no widow here to measure time against, no talkative sailor to mark the hour, just the flickering lantern, the smell of rot, and the sound of coughing behind the curtain near the stairs. You think someone died here once, maybe recently. You don't ask. You wouldn't know who to ask. You stopped tracking names a long time ago. Now you track symptoms, stiff fingers, shaking legs, the speed of your breath, the colour of what comes up when you cough, the way your heart sometimes skips, like it's thinking of leaving before you're ready. You sleep less deeply in this place. The stillness is different here. Less like peace, more like waiting. You don't feel safe when you drift. You feel suspended, like something's holding you underwater, just long enough to remind you it can. You wake in a sweat that smells wrong. Your mouth always dry, your eyes crusted shut. You don't speak in the mornings anymore. There's no one to speak to, and your voice doesn't come easy. One night, a man tries to sell you back your own coat. It's unmistakably yours, he, same rip at the hem, same missing button near the collar, only now it's been turned inside out and scrubbed with something that smells like lye. You don't argue. You let him keep it. You don't remember when you lost it anyway. Another night, you try to stand and your legs fold beneath you. You hit the ground hard, no one moves. You lie there until the boy nudges you with his foot and tells you to pick a different mat. His voice is flat, tired, barely more than a whisper. You crawl to the corner. You thank him. He doesn't answer. One night, you don't go back to the den. Not because you've made a decision, not because you're ready to stop, but because something in you feels scraped bare. Like there's nothing left inside, that even the smoke could cling to. You sit in the alley behind the tea shop. Your back to the bricks, your knees pulled to your chest, watching the faint glow from the second-floor window fade with the night. The sky above is the colour of dishwater. You tell yourself you'll move in a few minutes. That was hours ago. A churchman stops you in the alley. His voice is kind. His eyes are not. He's older, broad-shouldered, wearing a long wool coat that fits too neatly for the kind of cold you've come to know. His collar is high. His hands are clean. He kneels down beside you with the sort of practiced humility that people like him wear when they've never had to beg for anything. He says he's from the mission, that they're here to help, that they've set up a place just a few blocks away, warm beds, hot soup, clean water, no questions asked. He calls you son. He says there's hope. You don't answer. He keeps talking anyway. His breath smells like mint and sermon. He tells you the den is killing you, that the pipe was never meant for someone like you, that your soul still belongs to God, no matter how far you've strayed. You look at his hands and think of the boy behind the curtain, the way he passed the pipe with fingers stained from resin and heat. You nod once, just to end the conversation. That's all it takes. He guides you by the elbow. You're too tired to resist. The mission is clean, at least on the outside. Whitewashed walls, a wide wooden door, curtains pressed smooth behind the windows. Inside, the light is brighter than you've seen in weeks. It hurts your eyes. The woman at the front desk hands you a pamphlet before she greets you. It's called Redemption Through Restraint. You don't read it. She points you toward a bench and tells you to wait. You sit, you nod. Your legs ache. They take your name, or what's left of it. They ask where you were born, whether you can read, whether you're willing to accept guidance. You lie twice. You say whatever you think they want to hear. It doesn't matter. They've already made up their minds. You're shuffled down a hallway, handed a bar of soap and a towel, told to wash in a narrow room where the water runs lukewarm and smells like iron. Your clothes are taken and replaced with a set of scratchy linens, one size too big. Someone mutters a prayer outside the door as you dress. You're led to a long room lined with narrow cots, each with a folded blanket and a printed copy of the New Testament tucked beneath the pillow. The men already lying there don't look at you. Some are asleep, some pretend to be. One man stares straight ahead unmoving, eyes fixed on something behind the ceiling. You lie down slowly, the thin mattress crackling beneath you like paper. The blanket smells like lye and old hands. You don't close your eyes. That night, you don't dream. You hear coughing, the rustle of pages turning, the occasional shuffle of footsteps on the tile. Someone mutters scripture in their sleep. Someone else sobs without sound. You stare at the ceiling and trace the cracks with your eyes until morning light begins to bleed through the dirty window panes. A bell rings down the hall, and the smell of weak broth wafts in. You stay where you are. Before breakfast, there's a prayer circle. You're expected to stand, to bow your head, to accept the hand placed on your shoulder. The churchman is there, the same one from the alley. He smiles at you like he's already decided you've been saved. He says something about the power of renewal. You nod again. You've gotten good at that. Breakfast is broth and 2 slices of bread. You eat it slowly, chewing each bite until it dissolves into something tasteless. Across from you, a man in his 50s, thin, balding, face deeply lined, stares into his bowl like he's forgotten what to do with it. His lips move, but no sound comes. You don't try to speak. You finish your bread and push the bowl away. After the meal, they hand out more pamphlets. Hope for the lost, the path of the redeemed, victory over vice. Each one printed neatly, the covers glossy, the language careful. A woman in a green dress with lace gloves reads aloud from one, her voice clipped and cheery. You don't hear most of it. Your thoughts are louder, your stomach cramps again. Your hands tremble. You feel the cold under your skin, deep in the bones where the pipe used to live. They tell you there's work available. Dishwashing, wood chopping, envelope folding. You say you're not feeling well. A man with a book around his neck says that's the sickness leaving your body. That it's good. That pain is cleansing. that this is proof you're still capable of being saved. You want to ask him if he's ever tasted withdrawal, if he's ever curled up on a floor and prayed to stop existing. You don't ask. He wouldn't understand. You sit on your cot for another hour, hands in your lap, staring at your shoes. They don't fit quite right. One toe curls over the edge. The backs are stiff and pinch your heels. You think about the mat in the den, the dampness, the flickering light, the way the pipe slid into your hand without question. You think about the smoke, how it curled into your chest and soothed the ache behind your ribs. You think about silence, about not being watched, about not being forgiven. You stand. No one tries to stop you. The churchman sees you on the way out. He's talking to a woman with tear-stained cheeks, but he breaks off mid-sentence to grab your hand. He asks if you'll be back for evening service. He says there's still time, that he believes in you. You nod again, but this time, it feels like a lie even before your chin moves. You don't answer. You step outside. The air hits your face like a slap. Cold, wet, honest. You walk fast, turning corners without thought, moving on muscle memory and dread. You head back toward the alley, toward the door behind the tea shop, toward the smoke and the silence and the dim light that doesn't ask anything from you. You don't know what you'll trade this time. Maybe nothing. Maybe something you haven't admitted you're willing to give. You don't care. The smoke is waiting. The room hasn't changed. The boy doesn't ask where you've been. You lie back on the mat and let it all dissolve again. You don't know how many days pass. 3, maybe 4, maybe more. You wake only to cough or shift or breathe. You eat whatever is passed your way. You pay with what you can. One night you trade a single leather glove you'd forgotten was stuffed in your waistband. Another time, you barter a mended sock you are still wearing. You stop thinking in full days or even nights, only in waking and nodding, in cold and warmth, in when the pipe comes and when it doesn't. The silence deepens. The pipe is halfway to your mouth when the door splinters. It happens fast, too fast for anyone to react the right way. The door doesn't creak or slam. It shatters, a crack of wood and boot, and shouted English flooding the air all at once. Someone screams. Someone runs. The curtain is torn down in one rough motion, and suddenly the basement is filled with light and boots and noise. You try to sit up, the pipe still warm in your hand, your body unsure whether to move or freeze. Before you can decide, something strikes your shoulder hard, and you drop the stem to the floor, where it rolls beneath the mat. The shouting doesn't stop. You hear orders barked, names you don't recognize, someone yelling, "Down!" and someone else coughing blood. You see the boy with the scar pinned against the wall by a man twice his size, a club pressed against his throat. He doesn't fight, he doesn't plead, he just looks away. 2 officers grab the man who used to sweep the floor, an old one with a limp, and drag him across the room, his legs flailing against mats and limbs. He spits something in Cantonese, and one of them answers with a knee to the ribs. You try to stand and fail. Your legs don't work the way they used to. You're hauled up by the collar of your shirt, or what's left of it, and shoved against the damp brick. The impact rattles your teeth. A fist finds your stomach. Another cracks the side of your face. You don't remember falling, but your cheek hits the floor hard, and when you try to roll over, your mouth floods with the taste of iron, and something loose shifts in your jaw. You look up through one eye, and all you see is boots. They're not here to save you. That much is obvious. They don't ask who's in charge or who brought the resin. They don't read names or check IDs. They don't separate users from sellers, runaways from regulars, sick from lost. They don't bother with nuance. They came for bodies, for numbers, for something to put in a report and show the mayor's office when the week ends. You are not a person to them. You're proof that they're doing their job. You're dragged upstairs with a group of others, half limping, half carried, and thrown into a wagon that smells like sweat and mildew and vomit. Someone is sobbing quietly. Someone else is bleeding openly from a gash above the eyebrow. A man in his 40s is unconscious, his head lolling against the side of the cart. You sit wedged between two strangers, your shoulder dislocated or close to it, your breath shallow. No one speaks. The wagon rattles down the cobblestones like a hearse too cheap to care about the bumps. At the jail, you're searched, rough hands through your pockets, your sleeves, the waistband of your trousers. They take nothing of value because you have nothing of value left. You're lined up against a wall, told to state your name. You give it. The officer doesn't write it down. You're processed, or at least moved. You're not given a cell, not really. Just a cot in a room with 6 others. No blankets, no questions. You're fed something they call soup, though it tastes like wet chalk and onion peel. You choke it down and sleep with your back to the wall, your arms folded tight across your chest to keep your ribs still. You're not arraigned. You're not given a lawyer. You're not asked if you understand the charges. There may not even be any. On the 4th day, or what you guess is the 4th, you're handed what little items you still have and a thin slip of paper with a smudged stamp. It says fined vagrancy. No amount listed, no receipt, just that. You walk out into the morning haze, your jaw swollen, your ribs tight, and your left eye red with burst vessels. No one meets you. No one asks what happened. You lean against the stone steps and breathe through your nose, because your mouth still won't close properly. You don't know what happened to the others. You never see the boy with the scar again. You never see the old man. You walk past the tea shop 2 days later and find the windows dark. A fresh coat of paint covers the signage. The door is sealed shut with a new lock. A sign in the window says closed for renovation. You know what that means. You don't check again. Your limp gets worse. One leg drags when you're tired, which is always. Your teeth ache in the cold. One is missing now. The back molar, dislodged either by a knee or by the cold metal bar they pushed you against. You don't remember when it happened. Your shoulder clicks every time you lift your arm. You stop lifting it. No one calls what happened justice. You don't hear people talk about the raid in the street, at least not in detail. Some of the newspapers run short columns. Chinatown Vice Raid nets results. Opium dens shut down by heroic officers. The photographs, if there are any, don't include your face. You're not what they want people to see. You're the part of the story they sweep aside with a phrase like habitual users, like weathered bricks, like mildew. No one wants to read about mould unless it's been scrubbed away. Your skin hangs looser now. Your tongue forgets names. You feel it first in your sleeves, the way the fabric gathers around your wrists, no longer filled out by forearm or gesture. Your pants slip on your hips when you walk, though you walk less and less. Your face changes too, sharper in the wrong places, softer in the others. Your cheeks hollow. Your jaw seems to vanish some days, and on others, it juts out in the mirror, like someone else's. Not that you look often. You already know what's missing. You try to think of names sometimes, of people you once worked with, slept beside, sat near, on long rides across the plains. Some come back slowly, if at all, worn smooth like river stones, no edges to catch the memory on. Most are gone. The last names go first, then the first. Eventually, you forget what your own sounded like, in someone else's voice. You sleep more, but not in the way that rests you. You drop off like a candle tipped sideways, suddenly and without warning, and wake hours later with no sense of what happened in between. Sometimes, your limbs are tangled in unfamiliar positions. Once you wake with your face pressed against a puddle of something that isn't quite water, your legs are stiff, your back wet, your chest tight like it's forgotten how to lift. You scratch yourself in your sleep. You know because of the welts on your arms and thighs, the tiny half-moons your fingernails carve into your skin. Some become sores, some swell. One day, you find worms curled in a damp wound behind your knee. You pull them out one by one with fingers that don't tremble anymore. You feel nothing. You rinse the spot with the last of a tin cup of rainwater and go back to lying down. Infections come next. Quiet, slow, inevitable. One tooth blackens, then two. You stop chewing altogether. Your breath smells sour even to you. The skin around your ankle cracks open and refuses to close. You wrap it with a strip of cloth from your shirt hem and hope it doesn't spread too fast. It does. Your fingers swell, then deflate. The nails curl. You stop noticing. You begin to lose entire days, not just hours or conversations, but spans of time so large they feel like cliffs missing from the middle of a road. You wake up in places you don't remember walking to, on stairs, under porches, inside crates that once held cabbage. You find things in your pockets you don't remember trading for. Once, a handful of beans. Another time, a child's marble. You carry it for a week before losing it in a gutter. You miss it more than you should. Hallucinations come quietly, like old friends. You see people you once knew are standing just out of the corner of your vision, smiling, waving, walking towards you with slow steps. They vanish when you turn. You hear your name whispered from the mouths of shopkeepers you've never spoken to. You hear your mother's voice in the groan of a door hinge. You hear bells that no one else hears, ringing at odd hours, too far away to chase. You don't talk about this. There's no one to talk to. You've outlasted most of the others. The sailor is gone. The widow hasn't been seen in months. The boy with the scar vanished with the last raid. A few of the others, the ones who knew how to barter, how to lie well enough to stay out of jail, have faded into different streets, different corners, maybe different vices. You don't know. You stopped asking. The city doesn't look any different, but it feels sharper. The edges catch you now. The stairs trip you. The walls of alleyways seem to lean inward. The corners of buildings slice wind harder against your ribs. You don't blame the city. You're no longer surprised by how small you've become. You begin to recognize ghosts, not spirits, not phantoms, but the living ones, the men and women who walk past you without turning their heads, who shuffle with the same weight in their knees, whose skin is the same dry parchment hue as yours. You meet their eyes sometimes. There's no pity in those exchanges, just recognition, mutual agreement that this is what's left. Food is rare. Even when you find it, it barely registers. Half a biscuit from the trash. A piece of old bread that cracks when you bite it. A potato that's gone soft with rot. You eat what you can and vomit when you must. Hunger isn't pain anymore. It's just a fact. It's like rain or wind or the sound of boots outside the alley. The pipe is rarer now, but it still finds you sometimes. Passed by a familiar hand, purchased with a promise you don't plan to keep. You take it not for escape, but for the steadying. It levels the shake in your hands. It settles your heartbeat into something more rhythmic. It doesn't soothe anymore. It just pauses the deterioration. That's enough. There is a kind of peace in this stage, not comfort, not acceptance, just a horrifying calm that comes from knowing nothing worse can happen that hasn't already. You are past hope, past shame, past even memory in any useful form. What remains is routine. You sleep when your body demands it. You move when you must. You beg when you can. The rest is waiting. Not for anything in particular, just waiting. You don't flinch at the cold anymore. You don't notice your own smell. You don't wonder if people can see your ribs through your shirt. You no longer care who watches you lie down in the daylight. You no longer apologize when you're stepped over. You've become part of the street, something present but not counted. One evening, you try to count the days since your last clean shirt and lose track halfway through. Not because it's too high, but because you can't remember what day it is now. Or yesterday. Or the one before. It could be winter. It could be spring. It doesn't matter. You find a coal bin behind a butcher's shop. It's half full, dry enough to sleep in, low enough to go unnoticed. You crawl in carefully, lowering yourself between the dusty wooden slats, ignoring the way the black grit clings to your clothes and skin. You curl into yourself, knees to chest, cheek pressed to a half-crushed sack of ash. You listen for footsteps, but none come. You breathe in smoke and soot and old iron. You finally find another den. It's behind a false wall in the laundry. You crawl in on all fours. Someone told you about it 2 nights ago, or maybe longer. A man with cracked glasses and blood on his cuffs said there was still one place left. Quiet, tucked behind a shop that used to bleach linens for the rail hotels. It's off an alley so narrow you have to turn sideways to pass between the fence and the wall. Duck under a hanging sheet, still stained from someone else's wash. You knock the wrong way at first. A hand pulls you inside anyway. The door closes behind you. It doesn't latch, just sticks in the frame, like it's been warped by time and heat and neglect. The air inside is warmer than you expected, heavy with the sour steam of boiled rags and wood smoke. There's no sign, no name, just the hum of breath and the faint whistle of a kettle that no one's bothered to silence. You crawl through a gap in the back wall, the boards cut away in a jagged mouth just wide enough for a body. You drag yourself through, scraping your knee against a nail someone should have hammered down. On the other side, it's darker than it should be. The ceiling is low. The walls are bare. Mats line the floor in irregular rows, each one thin and buckled and shaped by the weight of people who haven't left. This one's different. Not in structure, but in feel. The smoke here is stronger. It coats your throat as soon as you inhale, burns your nostrils, makes your eyes sting. It doesn't smell like the old places. It's sharper, chemical, less earthy. The resin's been cut with something cheaper. Quinine, maybe morphine, something bitterer, faster, less patient. The den is run by someone younger than you remember being. A girl maybe 15 with a shaved head and arms thin as broomsticks. She doesn't clean the pipes, just reloads them with muscle memory and drops them in your lap without eye contact. The pipes are old and blackened. The lamps flicker low, their fuel stretched too thin. No incense, no hot water, no food, just smoke and shadow, and the sound of lungs giving up. You watch someone die your first night there. It's not dramatic, just a long exhale that doesn't reverse, a twitch of fingers, a slow tilt of the head toward the wall. No one moves, no one screams. The girl walks over, checks for breath, then drags the body out by the ankles. You don't know where it goes, you don't ask. She returns a minute later with a cold cloth and wipes the mat down before folding it in half. Someone new lies there within the hour. You start seeing death more often. Not always full. Sometimes just the beginning of it. The rattle in a throat that never clears. The dry lips that stop moving. The eyes that don't shut when the body does. You stop reacting. Not from cruelty, but from custom. It's part of the room now. Like the dripping pipe near the wall or the patch of floor that stays damp even when the others dry. You lie there and let the smoke fill your mouth, your lungs, your skull. You stop counting how long it lasts. The high is different, not soft anymore, not calming. It hits like a wave of nausea, swells into your limbs and crashes behind your eyes. You get dizzy every time. You forget who you are, then remember, then forget again. Your vision blurs even when your eyes are closed. The warmth in your body is fake. You know that now. A chemical warmth, borrowed heat, like standing in sunlight through glass just before it shatters. You start to hear things that aren't there. Not voices, but sounds. Crickets in winter. Bells without towers. A piano playing a song you swear you once knew. You hum along sometimes, lips moving around nothing. No one notices, or if they do, they don't care. The girl runs things with silent efficiency. She doesn't smile. She doesn't scold. When you can't pay, she doesn't throw you out. She just gives you less. She knows you'll come back either way. You stop offering excuses. There's nothing left to trade now. Nothing tangible. Nothing meaningful. Just your presence. Your weight on the mat. Your breath in the air. That's enough. For now. The others don't talk. You don't even see their faces clearly. Just outlines, curls of hair, shoulders hunched in prayer or surrender. You stop seeing men and women. Just shapes, shadows, ghosts wrapped in cloth. There's one who coughs in rhythm every night. Another who rocks gently with each breath. You grow used to them the way people grow used to furniture. Part of the room, part of the noise. You dream of places you've never been, a field of tall grass, a lake with a single boat drifting aimlessly, a city full of lights that don't flicker. In the dreams, you always have shoes, a name, a clean face. You wake up sweating and disappointed every time. Your ribs press sharp against your skin. Your hip bones ache when you lie down too long, but your legs give out when you stand. You feel your body failing in pieces now. First one knee, then a wrist, then the skin around your mouth. It splits when you yawn, it bleeds when you smile, which is rare enough not to matter. You stop wiping the blood away. You lose track of how many times you go back, whether you leave at all, whether days pass or if you're just dreaming time into motion. The lamplight blurs. The sound of coughing replaces thought. The pipe appears, and your hands reach for it before your brain registers the gesture. You inhale, you drift, you wake, you reach again. No one tells you to stop. Eventually, you stop thinking of escape. Not because you've accepted this, but because escape requires the memory of another kind of life, and you've misplaced it. There is no comparison anymore. Just this. Just here. Just the mat beneath your bones, the smoke in your throat, the soft clatter of a spoon in a distant bowl. You wonder if someone upstairs is still washing laundry. You doubt it. You don't remember the last time you left the room, the last time you stood fully upright, the last time you looked at a face and felt recognition. You lie on your side most of the time now, eyes half closed, fingers twitching around a pipe that may or may not be lit. You drift in and out of something too thin to be called sleep. You forget the difference between dreams and waking. Eventually, you don't wake up. It isn't violent, it isn't loud. There's no gasping, no thrashing, no dramatic collapse. Just breath that slows, then stops. A stillness that settles. The girl sees you in the morning, lying the same way you always lie, on your side with one hand curled toward your face. She doesn't check for a pulse. She doesn't need to. She's seen it enough times to recognize the angle of the jaw, the slack in the shoulder, the way the eyes stay closed too long without twitching. She kneels down, pulls the mat free, and wraps you in the same grey blanket he uses for all the others. The same way someone once did for someone he cared about. Maybe. No one asks your name. No one writes it on a tag or slips it between your fingers. The girl and another shadow carry you through the gap in the wall and into the laundry, which no longer runs water or washes clothes but still holds the stink of soap and decay. You're placed beside a stack of broken furniture, waiting for the city to haul it away. You are not the first body this building has held. You are not the last. A few hours pass. A city cart arrives. 2 men, tired looking, with blue uniforms that don't quite fit. They don't speak to each other. They lift you with more care than you expected, but not much. Your head bumps the side of the cart as they load you. One man grunts. The other keeps chewing whatever's in his cheek. You're covered, but not fully. One foot sticks out. It's bare, black with soot from the floor, curled slightly inward. You're taken to the city crematorium, not the one they use for dignitaries or those who paid in advance, but the cheaper facility down by the Mill Canal, where the smoke always smells like char and where the windows are nailed shut so no one can look in. Your body waits there until someone finishes the paperwork. It doesn't take long. There are boxes pre-printed for cases like yours. No family, no assets, no known cause worth investigating. You're listed under a category they call unclaimed male approximate, 35 to 50 inches. They average it out. No one checks. The clerk misspells your name, not because she's careless, but because it was given by someone else, halfway remembered, and scribbled on a receipt for a night's stay 2 winters ago. She doesn't pause. She doesn't ask. She writes it once, copies it again, and files it with a dozen others from the same week. One is a sailor. One is a man they found behind a fish stall. One is just marked unknown Asian. You're cremated within the day. There is no funeral, no prayer, no notice in the paper, no procession. The furnace door closes. The flame roars. The room smells like burnt cloth and ash. Your bones powder faster than most, brittle from months of malnutrition and damp. There's little left, just enough to fill a tin canister stamped with the city seal and locked with a hinge that no longer seals tight. The canister sits on a shelf in the back for a while, maybe a few weeks, maybe less. When the space fills up, they bury a few of them together in a shallow trench behind the facility wall. They don't mark it, just a row of sunken grass that's greener than it should be. You lie beside men you never met and women no one looked for. The city counts you among its charitable losses. Somewhere in a budget report, you're worth $1.83 in labour and fuel. Back at the den, the girl doesn't speak about you. She folds the mat, sets it aside, and scrubs the floor with water from a rusted tin pail. She replaces the lamp, which had grown dim anyway. A new man takes your spot before the day ends. He doesn't notice the blood in the floorboards. No one does. The pipe passes to him just as it once passed to you. Warm, silent, waiting. A week later, the new den is raided. They arrest everyone still conscious. The girl vanishes. No one hears what happened to her. Maybe she ran. Maybe they took her somewhere deeper. The wall is sealed with fresh boards. The laundry is emptied. The tea shop changes hands again. By the end of the month, a new tenant moves in. He runs an import business. Dried leaves, canned light cheese, boxes of spice labelled in cursive. The window gets cleaned for the first time in a year. The gap in the back wall is plastered over. The smell fades slowly. Customers come in during daylight. The floor is swept twice a week. The new owner never asks what the room was used for before he arrived. He doesn't care. The past here is quiet. It doesn't raise its voice. No one remembers your face. You never even made the papers. The streets where you once staggered are paved now, smoother and brighter than you ever knew them. Gaslight gave way to electric bulbs, clean and humming overhead, shining down on rows of tidy shop fronts and clipped newspaper stands. The alley you died behind is still there, but it's narrower now, hemmed in by concrete and commerce. The laundry is gone. The butcher's is a wine bar. Someone parks a bicycle where your body once lay shivering. It locks neatly to a post-painted city regulation blue. No one remembers the den. The last one? Or the first? No one remembers the boy with the scar, or the widow in gloves, or the sailor with the tremor in his hand. The buildings they huddled in have been leased, flipped, painted, rezoned. Offices now. Storage, condos, a wellness studio with eucalyptus steam and light jazz echoing from within. The floorboards you bled on were ripped out, the beams treated and sealed. The air smells different now, lavender, citrus, stone-polished lemon. The past doesn't rot here, it's sanitized. Downtown gleams in steel and glass. Towers rise higher every year, their reflections stitching themselves into the harbour like something trying to forget its own foundation. The new streets are wider, the sidewalks less cracked. The city speaks in terms of growth now. Rising values, new transit corridors, export economies. Tourists buy postcards with hand-coloured watercolours of the skyline, filtered sunsets, and waterfront views that never show the gutters. Chinatown shrinks, slowly, legally. No fire this time. Just permits. Just zoning. Just price per square foot climbing higher than its tenants can reach. The signs in the windows still carry Chinese characters, but fewer each year. English creeps in through paperwork and developer branding. A family-run shop selling dried mushrooms is replaced by a boutique tea lounge with soft lighting and ceramic cups imported from elsewhere. You can still get pork buns and ginger candy, but they cost more now, and someone behind the counter will always offer to speak English first. Where you once lay on damp mats behind boarded doors, someone now holds yoga poses on imported bamboo floors. The heat is controlled. The lights dim on timers. No one coughs behind the curtain. There are no curtains. Only windows. Big, clean ones, that look out over the city and its promise of progress. No one remembers what was underneath. Or maybe they do. Maybe they just choose not to say. The clinics are modern now. The medicine comes in glass bottles with stamped labels and printed dosage instructions. You can buy opiates with a prescription, measured by the milligram and covered by insurance if you fill out the forms correctly. The same smoke you once inhaled with blood in your mouth now comes as time-release tablets in amber vials. You don't need to crawl through a wall anymore. You just need a doctor who writes quickly and doesn't ask questions. The new version doesn't smell as sweet, but it works the same way. There are advertisements now for relief, for sleep, for calm. The same promises the pipe whispered into your ear now appear on billboards. And pharmacy shelves? Take the edge off. Reclaim your peace. Let go. You see mothers in glossy magazine spreads smiling with soft eyes, holding bottles in one hand and peace of mind in the other. A pill, not a pipe. A box, not a basement. But the principle is the same. The companies make their money up front now, not in shadows or back alleys, but in dividends and campaigns. They sponsor marathons and health fairs. They donate to libraries and children's hospitals. Their names are etched into the sides of buildings downtown, beside banners for banking and tech. If you overdose today, there's a hotline, there's a commercial, there's a plan, there's a press release, there's a statement expressing concern. There is still suffering, of course, but it's quieter or louder, depending on which part of the city you're in. The neighbourhoods change, the names change, the drugs change, but the ache remains, the hole remains, the hands still shake, the stomach still burns, the mind still unravels in familiar patterns. Now they call it a crisis. They give it acronyms. They hold panels and write grants. They study it, but they don't end it. They study you too. Men like you, lives like yours. Social decay, historical case studies, marginalised populations. You appear in footnotes now. You're a data point in a paper someone presents. At a university, unhoused adult male, opium dependency, deceased. The students nod. The professor moves on. No one asks your name. They wouldn't pronounce it correctly anyway. No plaque marks the place you died. No obituary preserves your timeline. You are not the lesson. You're the background noise to the morale. The ghost inside the statistic. The cautionary tale they no longer bother to repeat. Your silence has been absorbed into the foundation, tamped down, sealed over, and deemed structurally sound. The building holds, Seattle thrives, the trains run on time, the market stalls overflow, the ferry whistles echo across Elliott Bay, and children point at the skyline like it was always this tall. A man in a polished suit passes a corner where someone once traded a coat lining for a pipe and doesn't know it. A mother pushes a stroller over the same brick where your breath once curled into the cold. The city hums around them, clean and orderly and full of forward motion. You are not a scar, you're not even a wrinkle. You are a line erased from a map no one reads anymore. And that would be fine, almost poetic, if it weren't for one thing. They still build fortunes on addiction. That brings us to the end of tonight's story. A man who came west chasing relief, found silence in smoke, and disappeared between police raids and peeling wallpaper. Not a criminal, not a victim, just one of the many who slipped through the cracks and were quietly swept away. If you'd like early access to more of these slow unravelling histories, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other forgotten lives and overlooked tragedies you'd like to see explored.